Good evening. It's good to be with you tonight. Okay, we need to turn this back down so a normal speaking person like myself can not blow everyone away. That's too much. I'll be hoarse before it's over with. I mean, when I say a hair, I'm talking about one of my hairs. Like, just, that's what I'm saying. Just look at it. Look at it. All right. Genesis chapter 28. I lost my voice Sunday night. I'm not sure why, but I had a hard time regaining my voice. And we're not talking about why I lost my voice Sunday night.
It could have been all on political view.
Yes, that's what it was indeed. Was it political stuff? Sure, that's what it was. We touched on this last week, but I want to pick up here and continue. We have a lot to cover tonight, a lot of reading to cover tonight. The narrative with Jacob is very lengthy, and a lot of it is just interesting. It's self-explanatory. We learn a lot of interesting details about the life of Jacob and his wives. He had many wives, as we'll see here in just a few moments. But before we get to his wives, let's look at verse 10 of chapter 28 one more time. We'll read the text together and then make a few comments. Jacob went out from Beersheba and went toward Haran. I'm in Genesis chapter 28. So he came to a certain place and stayed there all night because the sun had set. And he took one of the stones of that place and put it at his head. And he lay down in that place to sleep. He dreamed, and behold, a ladder was set up on the earth, and its top reached to heaven. And there the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. And behold, the Lord stood above it and said, I am the Lord God of Abraham, your father, and the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie I will give to you and your descendants. Also your descendants shall be as the dust of the earth. You shall spread abroad to the west, the east, the north, and the south. And in you and in your seed all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Behold, I am with you, and will keep you wherever you go, and will bring you back to this land, for I will not leave you until I have done what I have spoken to you. So Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, Surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. And he was afraid and said, How awesome is this place! This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven. Jacob rose early in the morning, took the stone that he put at his head, set it up as a pillar, and poured oil on top of it. And he called the name of that place Bethel. But the name of that city had been Luz previously. So Jacob made a vow, saying, If God will be with me and keep me in this way that I'm going, and give me bread to eat and clothing to put on, so that I come back to my father's house in peace, then the Lord shall be my God, and this stone which I have set as a pillar shall be God's house, and of all that you give me, I will surely give a tenth to you. Why was Jacob moving? Where was he going, and why was he moving? Very quickly, anybody? What was wrong with his brother?
He was a little upset at him.
The brother was upset with him and wanted to kill him, and stated as much. And so he's literally fleeing for his life, and he's going to Haran, where he expects to meet up with extended family, where he will hopefully meet a wife. And so on this journey, he has this interesting dream, and we mentioned this in closing last week. I didn't get a chance to really explore it like I wanted to. And I was just exploring with you the fact that we all have dreams, and sometimes they're interesting dreams, and sometimes they're bizarre, and sometimes they're very realistic, and sometimes we realize, I even tell myself sometimes when I'm dreaming, this is just a weird dream, and I'm going to wake up from it in a little bit. So I know I'm dreaming. It's like I'm conscious that I'm dreaming, which I'm not sure what to make of that. Am I really dreaming? I'm just making stuff up while I'm lying awake. I don't know. But I know that we all have dreams, and they hit us, and sometimes they affect us in various and asunder ways. But this was a very special dream. It was a divinely inspired dream. And one of the things I was asking last week is, why do you suppose God gave this dream to Jacob. There's nothing to say to Jacob at this point in his life. This is why you're dreaming this dream, and this is what this dream means. And so when I'm thinking about how it would have impacted him, we do know from what he said, the impression that it made upon him. He concluded that God was in this place. I don't know about you, but I find that rather insightful as far as the mindset of Jacob. When he says that God is in this place, what does that suggest? What could you infer from that? What's that?
That he's not everywhere.
Well, that's what you think he probably assumed. Maybe if I'm not with my father and in my father's house and the place where I grew up, that's where God is, and that's where I've encountered God, and that's where I've worshiped God. But now I'm going to another place, a different place, a faraway place, and God is not necessarily there, but he discovers on the way, hey, God's here too. Well, we know that God is where? He doesn't just have a particular place. God's everywhere. In the 139th Psalm, the psalm writer had a beautiful psalm. I'll just share with you some of these very interesting thoughts. Where can I go from your spirit, or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend into heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in hell, behold, you are there. If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me. If I say, surely the darkness shall fall on me, even the night shall be light about me. Indeed, the darkness shall not hide from you, but the night shines as the day. The darkness and the light are both alike to you. So again, the psalm writer just reminds us, God he's everywhere. This is perhaps one of the first lessons, theological lessons, I suppose, that Jacob is learning in his life. I would assume that most of the patriarchs would have already known this. Perhaps he's just coming to a fuller knowledge of it and beginning to grasp it from experience. I don't know. But it's certainly worth noting that God is everywhere. Something else that's interesting to note here. God is always with his people in a very special way. This ladder that was leading to heaven, the Lord God was standing at the top of the ladder that leads into heaven. But on this ladder, ascending and descending, are the angels of God. You may say, well, what's the significance of that? Well, we could draw a lot of conclusions, but one of the things that perhaps Jacob would have been reassured of was, God's with me, and he has his angels with me, and they are assisting me. They are guiding me and my footsteps along the way. And so he was reminded then of the providential care of God in his life, as we all should be. Hebrews 1:14, these are all ministering spirits sent forth to minister to those who shall be the heirs of salvation. We are given the same promise and the same blessed assurance that we also have the angels of God that help and or assist us. I don't know about you, but I find great comfort in that, knowing what Paul said in Ephesians 6. We wrestle not in our struggle against flesh and blood, but against what? Principalities, powers of the darkness, the prince of the air. We're struggling against sinister, spiritual, powerful forces. I'm thankful, are you not, that we're not having to struggle alone. We're not in this by ourselves. We're going to hopefully get to the point where we can say more about that tonight. Of course, the great significance, and we did read John 1:47-51 last week. We won't reread that. But Jesus made it clear when he was talking to Nathanael that this vision, this dream of this ladder was a reference to himself. And you will see the angel of God ascending and descending upon what? The Son of Man. Who's the Son of Man a reference to? Himself. And the angels of God are ascending and descending upon me, which, if they're ascending and descending upon the ladder in Jacob's dream, and Jesus is identifying himself, the Son of Man, with the what part of the dream? He's the ladder. And the ladder signifies what? Access, right? This is how I have access. And so Jesus is simply saying again, I'm providing, in fact, the way for you to have eternal life. There's an exclusive claim that's being made throughout Scripture, particularly in the Gospel of John, of which I've just referenced. Jesus said, John 14, verse 6, I'm the And how many other ways are there? No man come to the Father but by me. And so it's very exclusive. Oh man, I'm biting my tongue about some things I could say politically right now. But I mean, we understand that the others were excluded. All others are excluded. And only Christ and his way is a part of this. Something else I want to mention before we get to chapter 29. Just like his grandfather, Jacob says, if God will be with me and will bless me, I'm going to give him how much? Where did this tithing concept come from? You would assume, wouldn't you? Abraham gives a tenth to Melchizedek, and here Jacob is saying, if God will bless me. Well, what did Jacob have at this point, possession-wise? He didn't have anything, did he? He's fleeing for his life. So he's penniless, and he's looking for a place to live. So that's where we are. Any other comments or questions about the latter? I did want to. Yes, sir?
It's interesting to note that this concept, I am the God of your father,
Yes.
so forth and so on, it's the same thing that was said to Moses out of the burning bush.
I'm the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. Yes. The God of covenant, the God who makes covenant with all mankind in that case, because actually through the seed of these men, God would send the deliverer, the ladder, and fulfill the very promise he made in Genesis 3:15. Okay, chapter 29. Jacob went on his journey and came to the land of the people of the east, and he looked and saw a well in the field, and behold, there were 3 flocks of sheep lying by it, for out of it that well, they watered the flocks, rather. A large stone was on the well's mouth. Now all the flocks would be gathered there, and they would roll the stone from the well's mouth, water the sheep, and put the stone back in its place on the well's mouth. And Jacob said to them, my brethren, where are you from? And they said, we are from Haran. Then he said to them, do you know Laban, the son of Nahor? And they said, we know him. So he said to them, is he well? And they said, he is well. And look, his daughter Rachel is coming with the sheep. He said, look, it is still high day. It is not time for the cattle to be gathered together. Water the sheep and go and feed them. They said, we cannot until all the flocks are gathered together, and they have rolled the stone from the well's mouth. Then we water the sheep. And while he was still speaking with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherdess. It came to pass, when Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, that Jacob went near, rolled the stone from the well's mouth, and watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. Then Jacob kissed Rachel and lifted up his voice and wept. And Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's relative, and that he was Rebekah's son. So he ran and told her father. It came to pass, when Laban heard the report about Jacob, his sister's son, that he ran to meet him, and embraced him, and kissed him, and brought him to his house. So he told Laban all these things, and Laban said to him, surely you are my bone and my flesh. And he stayed with him for a month. Now let's just stop here and kind of gather a few little thoughts. You find something interesting here. Jacob meets these, quote, brethren who are from Haran, and he scolds them about how they're treating their flocks. And then he turns and he rolls the stone away when he sees Rachel. Now, a lot of commentators would suggest that Jacob was a man of superhuman strength, and that's why he was able to roll the stone away on his own. Others insinuate and even come out and say he was so in love and carried away with the beauty of Rachel that he ran and grabbed the stone and rolled it away. I think it's probably more likely that these, quote, brethren that he's talking to were boys. They were young boys, and were not capable themselves of rolling that stone away. And so they were simply gathering their flocks and waiting for all the others. And when someone larger than themselves would come along and capable, would roll the stone away, and they would water their flocks. Otherwise, how do you explain him scolding them about how they're treating their flocks and their herds? He's a stranger. He wouldn't presume to do that if he's talking to someone his own age. I just think it's probably more likely, rather than trying to embellish the love story aspect here, oh, he was so in love, he ran and grabbed that rock and rolled it away. Well, you know, if the women want to think that about him, that's fine, but I think it's probably more likely that he was just doing what most men would do, and these boys could not do. Any questions or comments about that? Good. Verse 15. Laban said to Jacob, because you are my relative, should you therefore serve me for nothing? Tell me what your wages shall be. Now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the elder was Leah. The name of the younger was Rachel. Leah's eyes were delicate, but Rachel was beautiful of form and appearance. Now Jacob loved Rachel, so he said, I will serve you 7 years for Rachel, your younger daughter. And Laban said, it is better that I give her to you than I should give her to another man. Stay with me. So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed only a few days to him because of the love he had for her. Then Jacob said to Laban, give me my wife, for my days are fulfilled, that I may go into her. And Laban gathered together all the men of the place and made a feast. And it came to pass in the evening that he took Leah his daughter and brought her to Jacob. He went into her, and Laban gave his maid Zilpah to his daughter Leah as a maid. So it came to pass in the morning that, behold, it was Leah. And he said to Laban, what is this you have done to me? Was it not for Rachel that I served you? Why then have you deceived me? And Laban said, it must not be done so in our country to give the younger before the firstborn. Fulfill her week, and we will give you this one also for the service which you will serve with me still another 7 years. Jacob did so and fulfilled her week. So he gave him his daughter Rachel as wife also. And Laban gave his maid Bilhah to his daughter Rachel as a maid. Jacob also went into Rachel, and he also loved Rachel more than Leah. And he served with Laban still another 7 years. When the Lord saw that Leah was unloved, he opened her womb. But Rachel was barren, so Leah conceived and bore a son, and she called his name Reuben. For she said, the Lord has surely looked on my affliction. Now therefore my husband will love me. Then she conceived again and bore a son, and said, behold, because the Lord has heard that I am unloved, he has therefore given me this son also. And she called his name Simeon. She conceived again and bore a son, and said, now this time my husband will become attached to me, because I have borne him 3 sons. Therefore his name was called Levi. And she conceived again and bore a son, and said, now I will praise the Lord. Therefore she called his name Judah. Then she stopped bearing. Wow. So he clearly loved Rachel, and he worked 7 years for her. And this is the part of the love story that we know is true. He was so in love with her, he was so infatuated with her, so excited about being with her, that those 7 years seemed but just a few weeks. It didn't seem like any time at all. I mean, time just flies by when you're having a good time. And apparently he had a good time serving Laban. And so here comes the night for the wedding, and you know, I've often wondered, even as a kid, I remember reading this story, I thought, how would you not know? You were thinking the same thing, weren't you? You just were afraid to ask it in a Bible class. We have this tradition still on the wedding day. Women will wear a veil. So I imagine as the feast is taking place that Leah gets all duded up, and she puts on her veil, and it's dark, and they didn't have fluorescent lights, and he goes into his tent, and I don't know, maybe she put on perfume like her sister. Maybe she even wore clothes like her sister. It's kind of dark. Maybe she fixed her hair like her sister. You say, well, where do you get those ideas from? Well, he was deceived, wasn't he? Well, had he ever deceived anyone? How had he deceived that person? Well, he fixed food like his brother. He put hair on his arms like his brother. He wore the clothes of his brother. He did everything that you would think you would have to do to deceive someone. It wasn't dark, but his father's eyes were dim. They couldn't see. So the deceived one is now himself. You know, there's an expression I see it on Facebook all the time. It really, really irritates me. I hear a lot of my brethren using it too. You know, karma is going to do this. Karma is going to do that. Karma is an Eastern mystic concept. It comes out of the Hindu faith and has nothing to do with Christianity whatsoever. It's not real. It's not true. But I understand people use the term loosely. But there is a biblical phrase that has the right idea. And that right idea is you reap what you... So if you deceive people and lie to people, what likely is going to happen to you? Someone may deceive you and lie to you, right? So he's being deceived, and he was himself a deceiver.
But it must have been very dark in that tent.
In that what?
In the tent.
Say it again. Tent. Thank you. That's what the tent, yeah. It probably was very dark in the tent. Single syllable word. Do what? What? I had to hear it 3 or 4 times. Tent. I love you, Fran. You have to be loved. I mean, that's 4 letters. T, in it, T and T. Anyway. Here's something that's fascinating. God saw that Leah was loved less. And what did God do? And I'm not being disrespectful, but that's the equivalent of nah, 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 nah. I mean, God working with Leah. I mean, in essence, that's what's happening here. Because God had pity upon her. And I mean that in the most serious way. I mean, it's like, okay, if this is the way you're going to treat these women, well, then this is how I'm going to respond. Now, yes?
It seems strange to me if the man loved one woman, that he would continue to go back to the one he didn't love.
I don't know that he didn't love her. He just didn't love her as much. I'm not going to say anything more about it than that. But yes, Jordan?
Should be his only wife in God's eyes.
She was his first. Okay, Jordan, you got me there. I'm gonna go there. Okay. We have 2 wives and we have 2 handmaids, and they all eventually were married to Jacob, and all eventually bore children to Jacob. He had 12 of them and a daughter, so 13 children. So again, we have all these children born to Jacob and Rachel and Leah. And I say it that way because that's how we think of Jacob and whose name do you equip? You think Jacob and Rachel, right? Why? Because Okay, but when we study the Bible, and we've made this point throughout our study of Genesis, what is God saying to us from Genesis chapter 3, verse 15 to the very end of the book? What is God saying to us? I have what? I have a plan. And what is the plan? To save fallen humanity. And so how is God going to save fallen humanity? Through your seed. So when we talk about Jacob and we talk about his significant other, we think Rachel. But Jordan rightly pointed out his first wife was Leah. Now Leah had initially 4 sons. She would have 2 more later, but she initially had 4 sons. And her handmaid had sons too. But these 4 sons, 2 of them are rather significant. Levi is the father of who? Of the priesthood. So there was a whole Levitical order. There's an entire book in the Old Testament called Leviticus. And so we have the entire tribe with all of their descendants. They were the priestly class. Now, those are significant individuals in the Bible. And in fact, in the New Testament, they continue to be significant in a number of ways. But she also had another son, a 4th son. His name was Judah. Jesus is the Lion of the tribe of Judah. He is a descendant of what tribe? Judah. And so if Jesus came from Judah, whose wife really in the scheme of redemption matters? Leah, his first. But we don't think about it that way. We just almost instinctively say Jacob and Rachel. Well, because he loved her. But Rachel had 2 sons. Here's something interesting. We'll get to this. We hadn't read it yet, but I'll just go ahead and jump ahead here. Rachel said, "Give me children or else I die." She had 2 children, and at the birth of her second, what happened to her? She died. So she literally died having children. Now, she had 2 children. One of them was Joseph. Joseph was a good man. One of the greatest human beings ever to live on planet Earth. We haven't gotten to his narrative yet. It's very long, and it's very instructive, and it's good. We'll get there. But nevertheless, Joseph's descendants, he had 2 sons, Joseph did. Their names were Ephraim and Manasseh. So when the land was divided, eventually under the time of Joshua, and the land was cordoned off. The sons of Joseph, because the tribe of Levi did not have an inheritance, Ephraim and Manasseh had their own settlement. In time, the name Ephraim was synonymous with what? Well, idolatry, yes, but was used synonymously with Israel, meaning the northern nation of Israel. Israel was sometimes referred to as Ephraim, sometimes as Joseph. And so Joseph, Ephraim, Israel. There was no good king ever in the northern nation of Israel. Not one. The entire nation was characterized primarily with idolatry. And because of their rank idolatry, they went into Assyrian captivity and never returned again. This is the descendants of Rachel. Now, she also had another son. His name was Benjamin. Now, during the period of the Judges, the tribe of Benjamin introduced into the people of God homosexuality. And because of this introduction of homosexuality, that entire tribe was almost completely annihilated. In fact, they were practically annihilated. And it took volunteers from other parts of the people of Israel to repopulate the tribe of Benjamin. Eventually they did recoup and in time became a very noble tribe, but they were not so noble in their early days. I'm simply saying when we think about Jacob, we think about Rachel. But Rachel's children really had nothing good to offer, did they? Except Joseph. But he was a man. I'm talking about descendant-wise as far as the people that came from them are concerned. Yes, ma'am?
Okay, she had these two children. I lost my chain of thought. Oh, and, I lost my chain of thought.
It's okay. I do that all the time. I'm probably doing it right now.
Oh,
Listen.
she died while they were very young. So someone else had to do the rearing of these children. So I don't think we need to put a lot of blame on
I'm not blaming anyone. I'm simply making an observation about their children. It's not really so much whether they're good or bad people. I'm simply saying that in our minds, we think Jacob and Rachel. And it is a sweet love story. Yeah, indeed, he loved her more than his other wives. But he loved her the most. She was the prettiest, I guess. At least he thought so. I'm just saying that in the overall scheme of things, particularly in the plan of salvation, the truly significant wife was Leah. And she was the delicate-eyed woman. What does that mean? Nobody really knows. Everyone guesses as to what that means. It ranges from her eyes were ugly. She didn't have pretty eyes. 2, that was the only thing about her that was pretty. She had pretty eyes. So it just depends on who you're listening to and who's translating it for you. I don't know that we really fully understand what it means to have delicate eyes. That's how it's translated in some English versions. Others have weak eyes. Yeah, is that the English Standard Version? So weak or delicate. Again, I think that's where the translators are tending toward her eyes weren't that pretty to look at. Others would say the meaning is very opposite of that. It meant that's the prettiest thing about her, and the rest of her wasn't so much. And Rachel, she had all the female figure that, men are attracted to and that sort of thing. But who knows? We just know that he didn't find her to be as pretty as her younger sister. Okay. Any questions or comments so far? Verse 31. I'm sorry, we already read that. Chapter 30. Now when Rachel saw that she bore Jacob no children, she envied her sister and said to Jacob, "Give me children or else I die." And Jacob's anger was aroused against Rachel, and he said, "Am I in the place of God, who has withheld from you the fruit of the womb?" Wow! Think about that for a minute. Where did Jacob think children came from? He thought they came from God. Am I in the place of God that can make you have children? Let me ask you this question. Where do children come from?
That's what Eve thought.
I've gotten a man from the Lord. So if you bear children, God wanted you to bear children, right? And if you don't bear children, God didn't want you to bear children. Is that fair?
Well, maybe he.
I don't know that it's that easy an explanation. I really do not think it's that easy an explanation. God can withhold children. Indeed, he can. And in fact, he did. And he did give children. When God saw that Leah was loved less, he pitied her and allowed her to be very fruitful and bear children. And he withheld children from Rachel. So that's true. He did withhold and he did give. But I'm just thinking, is that true in every case? And I don't know about you, but it's problematic for me to assume that every time a woman conceives and bears a child, that God willed it. Now, I'm saying I find it hard to believe because I'm a finite human being and I'm limited in my understanding. I don't know everything, but when a crackhead gives birth to a baby that's addicted to crack, I'm having to ask myself, did God want that baby born addicted to crack? Was that God's will that woman do that? Or when a child is born to a woman who takes her child and locks it in a closet and lets it die of starvation. Did God want that woman to have that? I'm saying that because that bothers me and that troubles me and that perplexes me. I don't know, because there may be a reason why God does what he does that's completely unknown to me. I don't know the answer to that question. I do find it instructive and fascinating to recognize that in many instances, this is just one of many in the Bible, where the fruit of the womb was credited to God. And those who did not have children, it was because God willed they did not have children, or at least that was always the assumption. Yeah, Tommy?
I think it's just mainly because, like the work and stuff, it's to prove and to have his will done through all this. But yet natural order still goes on with us and stuff. It's not anything that to carry on the word. I think that's to carry on the word. It has to be for that miracle and other stuff that we let allow happen. And those that were healed were healed through something. It didn't heal everybody. It could have still been born with defects.
That's a very good observation. Very good point. He could have healed everybody, but he didn't. And sometimes he can intervene and allow someone to have children and withhold on. But then again, he may just allow the natural order to proceed. That's a very good point. Yes, Roger.
Some couples are not able to have children that they adopt.
Yes, that's correct.
Don't forget that.
That's exactly right. So we don't understand all the ins and outs and reasons and heretofores. But we do know that there are times when God can intervene. But I think Tommy's making a good point. Sometimes it is because God's will is being exercised and his purpose. And we don't always understand what that will and purpose is. So we just have to, again, learn to trust him. Okay, verse 3. So she said, "Here is my maid Bilhah. Go into her, and she will bear a child on my knees, that I also may have children by her." Then she gave him Bilhah, her maid, as wife. And Jacob went into her, and Bilhah conceived and bore Jacob a son. Then Rachel said, "God has judged my case. He has also heard my voice and given me a son." This is a surrogate motherhood situation, correct? Where someone's having a child for you. Therefore she called his name Dan. And Rachel's maid Bilhah conceived again and bore Jacob a second son. Then Rachel said, "With great wrestlings I have wrestled with my sister, and indeed I have prevailed." So she called his name Naphtali. When Leah saw that she had stopped bearing, she took Zilpah, her maid, and gave her to Jacob as wife. And Leah's maid Zilpah bore Jacob a son. Then Leah said, "A troop come," so she called his name Gad. And Leah's maid Zilpah bore Jacob a second son. Then Leah said, "I am happy, for the daughters will call me blessed." So she called his name Asher. Now Reuben went in the days of wheat harvest, so this is timing elapsing, of course, and found mandrakes in the field and brought them to his mother Leah. Then Rachel said to Leah, "Please give me some of your son's mandrakes." This is the PG-13 version. Y'all hold your ears. But she said to her, "Is it a small matter that you have taken away my husband? Would you take away my son's mandrakes also?" And Rachel said, "Therefore he will lie with you tonight for your son's mandrakes." When Jacob came out of the field in the evening, Leah went out to meet him and said, "You must come in to me, for I have surely hired you with my son's mandrakes." And he lay with her that night. I know, all you can do is shake your head, right? Wow. And God listened to Leah, and she conceived and bore Jacob a fifth son. Real wow. Leah said, God has given me my wages because I have given my maid to my husband. So she called his name Issachar. Then Leah conceived again and bore Jacob a sixth son. And Leah said, God has endowed me with a good endowment. Now my husband will dwell with me because I have borne him six sons. So she called his name Zebulun. Afterwards she bore a daughter and called her name Dinah. Then God remembered Rachel, and God listened to her and opened her womb. And she conceived and bore a son and said, God has taken away my reproach. So she called his name Joseph and said, the Lord shall add to me another son. It came to pass when Rachel had borne Joseph that Jacob said to Laban, send me away that I may go to my own place and to my country. Give me my wives and my children for whom I have served you. Let me go, for you know my servants which I have done for you. Laban said to him, please stay if I have found favor in your eyes, for I have learned by experience that the Lord has blessed me for your sake. Then he said, name me your wages and I will give it. So Jacob said to him, you know how I have served you and how your livestock has been with me. For what have you had before I came was little, and it has increased to a great amount. The Lord has blessed you since my coming. And now when shall I also provide for my own house? So he said, what shall I give you? And Jacob said, you shall not give me anything. If you will do this thing for me, I will again feed and keep your flocks. Let me pass through all your flock today, removing from there all the speckled and spotted sheep and all the brown ones among the lambs, and the spotted and speckled among the goats, and these shall be my wages. So my righteousness will answer for me in the time to come, when the subject of my wages come before you. Everyone that is not speckled and spotted among the goats and brown among the lambs will be considered stolen if it is with me. Laban said, oh, that it were according to your word. So he removed that day the male goats that were speckled and spotted, and all the female goats that were speckled and spotted, everyone that had some white in it, and all the brown ones among the lambs, and gave them into the hand of his son. Then he put 3 days' journey, which is about 50 miles, between himself and Jacob fed the rest of Laban's flocks. Now Jacob took for himself rods of green poplar and of the almond and chestnut trees, peeled white strips in them, and exposed the white which was in the rods. Don't ask me what in the world is going on here. And the rods which he had peeled he set before the flocks in the gutters and the watering troughs where the flocks came to drink, so that they should conceive when they came to drink. So the flock conceived before the rods, and the flock brought forth streaked, speckled, and spotted. Then Jacob separated the lambs and made the flocks face toward the streaked and all the brown and the flock of Laban. But he put his own flocks by themselves and did not put them with Laban's flocks. It came to pass, whenever the stronger livestock conceived, that Jacob placed the rods before the eyes of the livestock in the gutters, that they might conceive among the rods. But when the flocks were feeble, he did not put them in. So the feebler were Laban's and the stronger Jacob's. Thus the man became exceedingly prosperous and had large flocks, female and male servants, and camels and donkeys. I believe we call this genetic engineering or breeding. What poplar sticks have to do with anything under the shining stars, I couldn't tell you. I will say this, that Jacob was not shooting in the dark. God had already told him to do this. We don't know this yet. We're going to find out here in the next chapter. But in a dream, God, the angel of the Lord, in fact, had spoken to Jacob, and he said, you take this one or you take that one, whichever one I tell you to take, that's the one you... So these spotted, speckled creatures were according to God's instruction, and so Jacob did as God instructed, and Jacob was blessed because of it. And there, of course, is breeding that takes place here. I imagine if they had steroids in those days, he probably would have used those, and hormones and other things, which are really good for you and make you live longer. That's all I'm going to say about that. Now, chapter 31. Any questions on chapter 30?
I would say that, like you say, God was involved in this process.
Indeed he was. Oh my, we don't really have time to read much of this. Let's read the first few verses, and that'll explain what I just said. So Jacob heard the words of Laban's son, saying, Jacob has taken away all that was our father's, and from what was our father's he has acquired. Let me just say this. I got to stop and make this comment. Jacob was deceived by his father-in-law. But he was himself a deceiver, right? But Laban is going to learn, you don't want to mess with this guy. Because he's literally taken his livestock from him. He did it lawfully. He did it in the right way, according to agreement. There's nothing underhanded about this. But you don't mess with the original deceiver. And so, anyway, Jacob has taken away all that was our father's, but what was our father's, he has acquired all this wealth. And Jacob saw the countenance of Laban. Indeed, it was not favorable toward him as before. The Lord said to Jacob, return to the land of your fathers and your family, and I will be with you. So the Lord sees all this too, and the Lord tells him it's time to go. So Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah to the field to his flock, and said to them, I see your father's countenance, that it is not favorable toward me as before, but the God of my father has been with me, and you know that with all my might I have served your father, yet your father had deceived me and changed my wages 10 times, but God did not allow him to hurt me. If he said thus, the speckle shall be your wages, then all the flock were bore speckled. And if he said thus, the streak shall be your wages, then the flocks bore streaks. So God has taken away the livestock of your father and given them to me. And it happened at the time when the flock conceived, that I lifted my eyes and saw in a dream, and behold, the ram which leaped upon the flock were streaked, speckled, and gray spotted. The angel of God spoke to me in a dream, saying, Jacob, and I said, here I am. And he said, lift your eyes now and see all the ram which leap on the flocks are streaked, speckled, and gray spotted, for I have seen all that Laban is doing to you. I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed the pillar and where you made a vow to me. Now rise, get out of this land, and return to the land of your family. So verses 10 through 12 here, or 13, is kind of an explanation of what he had just said to his wives. But clearly God had appeared to him and reassured him and instructed him in this dream. This is what you're to do, and these are the ones you're to take. And so this was God's doing. So Jacob became wealthy how? God blessed him. Churches become strong and healthy and vibrant how? And churches languish when they do not have God's blessing. Joshua would learn that. They went to Jericho and they were successful at Jericho. They went to Ai and they were humiliated and defeated. Why? God was not with them.
Sin in the camp.
There was sin in the camp. God did not bless them. There are a lot of layers here in the comments I'm making now, and I hope many of you that are perceptive are hearing what I'm saying, but nevertheless, it all really boils down to, doesn't it? Whether God is blessing us or is not blessing us. And so Jacob is making it very clear. I didn't just do this on my own. I didn't just dream this up. Well, he did dream it, but it wasn't just a random dream. God divinely spoke to him in this dream and instructed him in this dream. And of course, Laban, he said, has changed my wages 10 times. I think that's probably an exaggeration, maybe hyperbole, or it could be the case, but it's probably just a Hebrew expression. He just keeps messing with me, and he won't stick to the agreement. And so I'm just going to get out of here. And in fact, God told him to get out of here and go back to where he had come from. Any questions or comments on the almond? Anybody got theories on the almond branches? I mean, they're drinking. I don't know what this. Any of you are breeders? You know anything about breeding animal, livestock? I mean, you like hit them upside the head with a stick or something while they're eating. I mean, does that make them
Certain minerals, you give them certain colors.
certain minerals? Maybe
Yeah, you give them a place, certain colors.
that's possible. I hadn't thought about that. And maybe he just make it, but God instructed all this, so he maybe so.
Also made sure that all the rams that were made were spotted and speckled.
That's right. Yeah, he genetic engineering. Huh? Yes, yes, sir.
There's a lot of names that got thrown out. Paul Savage has a book out that one of the congregations I was at had that has a mnemonic to remember all the sons. GIRLS, girls. JJZ, pronounce it jazz if you want to. Then band, BAND. Gad, Issachar, Reuben, Levi, Simeon, Joseph, Judah, Zebulun, Benjamin, Asher, Naphtali, and David.
Girls jazz band. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
That's an interesting way to remember that. Everybody has your little middle thing, but that's good. Girls jazz band. So that's the sons of Jacob. He's still Jacob at this point. He'll become something else in the next chapter. Thank you all for your time and attention. Huh? She is. Yeah, she went home today. Hatred. That was on your door. Number 2, please, in your psalm books. Where is Renee? Is she not in here? Okay. Is it too late to sign up for the Valentine dinner? The Olive Tree, 6 p.m., Friday night. Is it too late to sign up? No. Tom and Kay are listening over the internet, and you can tell them, huh? Not too late. Y'all can come. Area-wide youth devotional will be this coming Sunday. Our group will be leaving here as soon as our afternoon service is over. Please see Jonathan or Scott if you have any questions. Don't forget, this Sunday also is Perk Up the Pantry. Any items will be accepted, but we're suggesting paper products, canned meats, peanut butter, canned soups, and breakfast items. I appreciate everyone contributing to this good work. Vacation Bible School meeting will be this coming Sunday. Will that also be after the afternoon service? If you have any questions regarding this, please see Jason. I think that's all that I have in announcements. I do want to mention to you that Kay was able to go home from the hospital today and is doing very well. Tammy Howard has gone home from the hospital and is continuing to improve. It will be a slow process. Jeff Adams, of course, yes, he has gone home, and we did have good news and make sure everyone knew that it was not cancer. We're very happy to report that. Ann McGuire is doing well from her surgery, but she is still suffering with bronchitis as well as Stan, and so both of them are still suffering with this. Ricky was here at church Sunday. That's amazing. I mean, after what he's been through, it was quite encouraging to see Ricky with us, and he may be listening with us again tonight over the internet, but very glad for his recovery. Scott?
Diane Tage's mother, so Rick's mother-in-law, Diane Tage's mother, has had a hard time. She broke her finger and had to have some other surgeries, not related, got MRSA. And she's having a really hard time. So if we can put her on, I don't know her name.
I'm sorry to hear this.
Diane
Diane Page's mother.
She's in Illinois.
She's in Illinois?
Take care of her. That's where they are.
Okay, they're in Illinois taking care of her. I'm very sorry to hear that.
Also, if you have any parents that's not paid for Yes Weekend yet, then you'll see Jonathan will meet you tonight and get that covered.
Pay for your Yes Weekend if you haven't done that so far. How's Peggy doing? Has she gone home?
She's going home tomorrow.
Going home tomorrow. Is she doing well then? We're glad to hear that. All right. Number 2 is the song that's been announced in our song books as a song of encouragement. It's that time in the evening, midweek, when we're winding down, our Bible class is over, our minds are now on spiritual matters as they should be. It's always good to be here in the middle of the week and be able to reflect upon the goodness of God and His power and His greatness and His kindness. We're going to sing this song of invitation. And we're singing the song of invitation to encourage those who have needs of a spiritual nature, whether it be obeying the gospel or asking for the prayers of the church, to repent of public sin, whatever your need might be. This is the time to make that need known. So as we stand and sing this song, if we can assist you in any way, please make it known. Together we stand.
As the